You might look at the ACC deal with FSU and Clemson and say they prolong the inevitable. I don't see it that way.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Sid from Toy Story. Spencer McLaughlin. I'm Spencer McLaughlin. Definitely nobody else. Thanks for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth. And the biggest story right now, FSU and Clemson are staying in the ACC. They're settling it out. They're not going to leave. Oklahoma called off their spring game, and UCF quietly made a massive mistake that I need to address. But I look at this situation with the ACC, and I understand how you might arrive at the conclusion, well, the ACC has just put off their death until 2030. They're going to lose these teams eventually anyway. Maybe. But I'm Spencer the Optimist today. So the exit fee for FSU and Clemson to leave the conference before that time starts at $165 million, which is a far cry from about the $500 million that it was looking like it would be once upon a time that FSU and Clemson were considering funding. But now, of course, for the next 5 years or so, they're likely staying in the ACC. But that number to buy their way out of the ACC deal goes down by $18 million a year until it plateaus at $75 million after 5 years. Because, 165 minus 18 times 5 is 90, and that gets 75. All that good math, it does in fact check out. So, yes, one day it will be easier for Florida State and Clemson to leave the ACC, and $75 million if you want to go to the Big Ten or SEC and you feel like you could get a full share, yeah, that might be financially worth it one day. But here's why I think this move is smart on the side of the ACC and Commissioner Jim Phillips. Number one, two reasons. Number one, you have bought yourself time. You have looked at two schools whose departures would have threatened the very existence of your league. And you have now given yourself, in all likelihood, about a 5-year window to show them that your conference is the best place to be. And number two, you have demonstrated to them you recognize their importance to your conference by saying, all right, if you guys operate as the best, most successful programs in the conference, we'll give you more money. And if you are able to showcase that your television viewership is better than everybody else's by a lot, we'll give you more money. So now, what was a financial disadvantage compared to the rest of the country and nothing more for Florida State and Clemson now turns into, if they do things correctly, a significant advantage. So for the ACC, you allow them to be comfortable where they are, to be happy where they are. But you also don't just throw the rest of your league aside. You've said, hey, here are the incentives, here are the metrics we're going to look at to get more money than what is a typical revenue share from the conference distribution that everybody used to get equally. But my understanding is that the language isn't specific to FSU and Clemson. It's, hey, if you guys really are the best and you're going to go out and just run this league for the next 5 years, if you just have the money to do it, you go ahead and prove that. You keep your conference together. You've got the same viewership. You get to extend your ACC deal with ESPN from a television standpoint, and at least until 2030, you've bought yourself a significant amount of time. And in that time, Florida State and Clemson, who we know when they are run correctly are capable of winning this conference, as Clemson just demonstrated, as FSU demonstrated the year before, and they'll have to build themselves back up. I don't fully know what to expect from Florida State in 2025. They'll be better because the bar is so low, but again, year-to-year results are fluctuating. They go up and down, as we all know, even with some big-time programs and some big-time brands in the sport. So for FSU and Clemson, the opportunity is there to put a firm grasp, both competitively and financially, on the league you are in. And if you're the ACC, at some level, yes, you want those two teams to succeed so that they don't leave. Because the concession you gave them is, hey, if you still want to leave the conference after this new revenue structure that we have set up, you know what? We'll drop it year by year. But that's the ACC feeling confident at some level, or at least giving this idea a chance that the new revenue distribution will benefit those two schools, at least to some degree, and they will realize, yeah, the ACC is actually the place where we want to be. Because the other thing that FSU and Clemson, now that you have bought this time, are going to ponder, and I think FSU started pondering this after they went 2-10 in the ACC this year after only beating Cal and Charleston Southern on the football field. They saw how hard it truly can be for the reigning ACC champs to put it together again. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be like that forever, but it was, I think, a sobering reality for those in Seminole country to say, oh, wait, I don't think we want to go to the Big Ten or the SEC right now. You want to go to the two best conferences in college football? You want to try to compete for an SEC championship race that has Georgia and Texas and Alabama and LSU, and then you can throw in names like Texas A&M and Tennessee, throw them at like, you want to go up against a lineup like that where Florida, who just beat you, FSU this year, was not even close to an SEC title? You want to go into that conference right now? No. Maybe they'll reconsider in 5 years if Mike Norvell gets the train back on the track and has it pointed dead straight towards Success City. But if that doesn't happen, I think that consideration has to come in for FSU and Clemson at some point, which is, hey, isn't our ultimate goal to win a national championship? How is that goal further? If your goal is just to make more money, then yeah, play your cards so that you get into the Big Ten or SEC come 2030 when the exit fee from this conference with this renegotiated deal is down to $75 million. Yeah, go ahead and do all of that. By the way, it'll take you a couple of years to recuperate that money, unless you can raise it between now and then. Maybe that'll be a key part of FSU and Clemson's fundraising efforts. Maybe they'll go out and say, you know what, we have to start stockpiling money because 5 years from now, it'll be $75 million. We can get into the Big Ten or the SEC. But if I'm FSU and Clemson, I am leveraging this situation as they have, and they've done so successfully, to give themselves a chance to go out and thrive and to be compensated in a way that is different than what it was before. But I'm also thinking in the back of my mind, these are two programs that have won national championships within the last 11 years. Clemson's done it twice, FSU's done it once. That's the ultimate goal, isn't it? How are your goals furthered by going into the Big Ten or the SEC? Why don't you ask Nebraska fans how jumping up a conference level has gone, or ask Texas A&M whether or not their competitive interests have been furthered by going into the SEC, whether their playoff access has become more regular. Yes, you have more automatic bids looming if they expand to a 14 or 16 team playoff, God forbid, but it's probably going to arrive. If you're in the Big Ten or SEC, you've got more of those automatic bids. Okay, sure, I'll give you that. But how many more schools do you have to go for? Would you rather be a moderately sized fish in a big pond or a really big fish in a smaller pond? If you're able to close the financial gap, and maybe it doesn't end up being enough, and the Big Ten and SEC pull away in a few years, I'm talking on this very show about how, yeah, FSU and Clemson have to get out and go find a way to join the Big Ten or the SEC. But if this helps you close the financial gap in a significant way, your competitive interests are still best served by being in the ACC. Yeah, even if you only have 2 auto bids, what do you think is easier to get? One of those top 4 spots in the SEC or one of the top 2 spots in the ACC in a league where you have perhaps more money coming into your program already because of the donor base you have at either of these 2 schools, in addition to, if you succeed on the field, more money than everyone else in the conference? Which situation do you think is easier? Maybe you feel like it's the Big Ten or SEC. Okay. All right. You can go ahead and think that. But you've got a great situation over there. And if this financial realignment of their deal with the ACC works out so that they aren't at as big of a deficit to Big Ten and SEC schools who they want to catch to go and win a national championship, then this deal might just work out for both sides. And you know what? It does, at some level, screw the little guy in the ACC. Unfortunately, welcome to college sports. That's the world we've got. Let me know in the comments below what you think, or hit me up on Twitter at @McLaughlinCFB. I'll tell you what I think about this trend that is spreading across college football. We need to put a stop to it. First, this episode brought to you by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for skilled trades. Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help get you the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands, you'll find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. Kind of like the ACC. Stanford, Syracuse, same conference. Yay, I think. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trademaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, and now it's your turn. Join the Trademaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. You ever see the movie A Few Good Men? I love that movie. It is truly one of the most iconic films of all time. Tom Cruise is great. Jack Nicholson's even better, even though he only appears in about 3 scenes. So at one point, when Tom Cruise is cross-examining Jack Nicholson, who is a military general, who's of course done something that is illegal, and he's trying to get it out of him, but it's kind of hard to prove and such, he's going down a line of questioning that includes some ridiculous questions, like, what do you pack when you go on a trip? What sorts of outfits do you have and whatnot? And at one point, as Tom Cruise is pursuing this line of questioning, the judge slides in a comment and he says, quote, "I'm going to put a stop to this," end quote. Well, that's what I would like to do for canceling all of these spring games in college football. Now, Oklahoma is the latest school to say we're not having a spring game. Their posts said, quote, "a new spring football tradition." Crimson Combine Football Fan Day on April 12th, where they will have player drills and skills challenges, fan engagement, autographs and photos. You can hear from GM Jim Nagy and offensive coordinator Ben Arbuckle. So, look, here's where I'm coming from with this anti-spring game sentiment, anti-spring game cancellation sentiment, pro-spring game. College sports, with all the changes undergone in the last several years, is passionately anti-fan in way too many ways. Whether you're looking at schedules, whether you're talking about the college football calendar, whether you're talking about all the changes, NIL and the portal getting rolled out in such a reckless manner in the last couple of years that make people drink out of a fire hose to ingest all of the change that has gone on in the sport. All of those things just keep piling on and make it harder in many ways to be a fan. Now, I would like to make it very clear. I'm pro-fan. I am passionately, aggressively pro-fan. You know what isn't pro-fan? Realignment. I talk about that a lot, particularly in the off-season when those stories roll around, as people who have been with me for a while are aware of. And look, I understand why that's a big story, but I wish it wasn't a story at all. It's not good for fans to have mega conferences where the geography means nothing. Number one, the regionality of college football, which is something that has always made it unique and special, has been torn away at. And number two, for those fans who want to go to games, how many Stanford fans, however many there are out there, want to go to a game in Coral Gables? That's a conference game. Cal, I believe, plays Louisville next year. How many Bears fans are going to that? Now, Oklahoma and Texas to the SEC is not the worst example of this, because that geography makes a lot more sense. But you threaten the existence of the Big 12 and all the other fan bases that are in there and cause them a lot of unease and stress and worry that they didn't need to undergo. So is this as big of a story as that? No, because there's still going to be something for fans to go and see and watch and engage with their team. But the reason I'm so against spring games getting moved to these other formats or structures or what have you, if you don't want to televise the game because you're worried that players are going to enter the transfer portal, first of all, players are going to do that anyway. I don't see the evidence that there's a widespread phenomena of, yes, there are individual examples to be sure of guys have a great spring game and then all of a sudden they're in the spring transfer portal window. Perhaps you should, have your spring game after the spring portal window? Just a thought, just going to throw it out there. Because you're having these scrimmages and guys are aware of where they stand on the depth chart in practice, and if they don't like that, they're going to enter the spring portal window. And yeah, they might use the spring game as an opportunity. They could do that. But is that happening to a significant chunk of the roster, or a couple of kids and coaches are trying to get out in front of it? Which, again, I understand. But if you're a fan who hasn't watched your team play in months and won't see anything that resembles football with this team for many more months, do you want to watch a series of drills and a glorified practice? Or do you want to watch the teams get split up and watch them go out there and play a game? I know which one I would rather see. And some spring games are more well attended than others. I get that. So if you're an athletic department saying, we don't feel like there's a lot of upside here, not a lot of people are showing up, okay. But there are plenty of spring games out there that draw tens of thousands of fans. And it's just another one, you just keep stacking it on. In the Sunday, banana split Sunday of changes that aren't great for college football fans, this one's probably the whipped cream. It's not the scoops of ice cream or the banana or the hot fudge. It's the dollops of whipped cream on top. Hope you're using fresh whipped cream because that's the only way to go. And it's not that hard to make, just, cream, a little powdered sugar, splash of vanilla, whip it up, boom, easy. Get a hand mixer. Anyway, so it's the whipped cream. If you take off the whipped cream, you still have most of the sundae, but it's still a component that you look forward to consuming. And it's something that I think a lot of fans do enjoy going to, because most fans don't get to look behind the curtain a whole heck of a lot. They don't get the opportunity to see what these guys are like, or to get them excited about the season. They don't go to practice because fans aren't allowed to practice. Practices are closed. So making this an open practice, this is just becoming more and more of a trend and a theme in college football, and I don't want to see it continue. Every coach is citing their own reasoning. It's the schedule. We're tired. It's this. It's that. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to, we don't want to showcase our players. If you're worried about a guy having a good spring game and then hitting the transfer portal window, perhaps you should look internally at why someone is so close to leaving your program. Does he actually have a path to playing time? Does he actually like being there? Are you doing all the things necessary to make sure that whatever school it is where he wants to be? I'm not calling out one school in particular here. Just a general thought to think about when you see these spring games get canceled. I don't like it. It is spreading across the country. I don't want to see it. And I'm doing everything I can to put a stop to this. Will I get my way? Nah, I rarely do. But hey, that's the way it goes. I don't know if UCF fans are going to like what is on the way. So I'll be honest with you folks. This move that was made by UCF's new head coach, Scott Frost, who's, recurring head coach, is one that flew under my radar a little bit. But it was brought to my attention that in his first year, Scott Frost has hired to be his defensive coordinator, Alex Grinch. No, that's not a named doppelganger out there. It's that Alex Grinch. The one who USC fans never wanted hired in the first place. The one who USC fans wanted removed immediately. The one who USC fans saw get removed in the middle of the 2023 season because it was such a disaster. They wasted a Heisman Trophy winner, number 1 overall pick, and their explosive offenses, which regressed this past year, when they finally hired a real defense coordinator, yeah, I don't know what Scott Frost is doing here, but that, frankly, that's the best way I can put it. I don't know what he's doing here. I don't know how you look at Alex Grinch's track record and say, yeah, this is a good idea. This is a guy we should hire. I feel like he's got what it takes. What on earth has he ever demonstrated in the last several years? I'm not pigeonholing, the window of which I'm examining his defenses. We have got a several year power conference body of work, and it's bad. It's not the Mona Lisa. It's a cheap knockoff, and everyone knows it's fake. So just to throw some numbers into the conversation, most of you might, I don't know. Well, actually, I don't know how many of you know who Alex Grinch is, but for those that do, know that I am right about what I speak. And there's a silver lining for UCF fans that I will touch on in a moment. But let me lay this out with just a couple of numbers. Here are the last 5 seasons that Alex Grinch has been a defensive coordinator. 3 years at Oklahoma, 24 points per game, 21.7 points per game. Oh, hey, trending in the right direction. 25.7 points per game. Trended in the wrong direction there. Now, remember, he was the DC when Lincoln Riley became the head coach. They took over for Bob Stoops, who was a defensive guy. So by his 3rd season, once, his scheme had been embraced and he'd gotten his recruits in there and really sunk his teeth into the defense at Oklahoma, it was getting worse. Then he goes to USC. Tough situation to inherit, no doubt. No doubt. 29 points per game his first year, 34.5 his second. He didn't make it all the way through that season. Constant regression. That is a 3-year trajectory. Now, points per game, it's just one metric. Why don't you go look at what Nebraska's staff did? Their defense coordinator just got hired to Florida State. You know why? Because Mike Norvell needed a change on that side of the ball and realized, that guy's really good. They came into Nebraska right away, immediately, which should not be as quick of a turnaround as a place like USC, and they became an elite defense in year 1. And D'Anton Lynn went to USC this year, and in year 1, boom, had things turned around. Coaching, scheme, recruiting, all of it has taken a significant step forward after Alex Grinch was relieved of his duties as defensive coordinator. This hire, red flag. That term gets tossed around a lot in the dating world, or just kind of sarcastically in the dating world on Twitter, like, oh boy, if he's got this or if she's got this trait about her, it's a red flag. Here's a red flag. You want a reason to fade UCF? I have tempered expectation for the Knights in a really deep Big 12 conference title race in 2025. They could maybe turn it around by 26 or 27, but not if Alex Grinch is your defensive coordinator. That's just not going to happen, because we have seen at 2 different stops, at places where you actually have superior resources on paper than most of the other schools in your conference. You don't have that at UCF. You're not head and shoulders talent-wise or recruiting-wise above everybody else. They could be, but that's the other element that concerns me here. Alex Grinch at USC, D'Anton Lynn is showing us he didn't just underachieve as a defensive coordinator on Saturdays in the fall. He underachieved as a recruiter. USC currently has the number 1 class in the country according to 24/7 Sports. You know why? Because they're finding some defensive kids. They're going out and finding higher level kids, and Lynn is a huge part of that. And some of that is that Lincoln Riley has made some other hires, and they're going out and they're changing their philosophy to, hey, from being so portal heavy to, hey, we need to build through high school recruiting. But D'Anton Lynn's at the center of that because Alex Grinch wasn't able to get him there. So major red flags. Do not like this for UCF in any way, shape, or form. Frankly, I don't know how this flew under my radar. Because this past season, Alex Grinch was the co-safeties coach, or an assistant basically at Wisconsin. And they missed a bowl game that's not his fault. That's not all his fault. I mean, sure, you could choose to look at the fact that, there's regression and losing in each of the last 3 seasons that he's been a part of it. But hey, who am I? I'm just a guy behind a mic, right? Just a guy talking into a microphone saying facts. But here's the upside. If this does work, and I have to come on here and eat crow because UCF has the best defense in the conference, then, I don't think that's really possible or realistic. But if their defense is good and UCF overachieves this year, the good news, Golden Knights fans out there, is you can rest assured knowing, hey, Scott Frost is a new man as a head coach. Those Nebraska days, they're way behind him. Look at what he did. Because, yes, Scott Frost is an offensive guy. But I point this out regularly because I get the impression from most college football fans that I talk to in person or engage with online, they don't quite have this concept grasped, so allow me to throw this out there. The head coach works with both the offensive and defensive staffs. Whoa! What a concept. Even Lincoln Riley, he might not be as involved on the defensive side, but he's not taking 0 meetings in there. That's a rarity for a head coach to do. Chip Kelly was like that back in his original run at Oregon, but again, that's not a commonplace ordeal. So if Scott Frost is able to find a way to succeed on the recruiting trail and on the field, defensively, with Alex Grinch as his defensive coordinator, you should not feel good about Scott Frost as your head coach. You should feel great about Scott Frost being your head coach. Because if he has rehabilitated a guy who we have all looked at and seen for several years recently, not way in the past, that was then, this is now. No, this was within the last 2 years that everyone looked at him and went, this isn't good. This is not high level defense. This is not someone people should want to hire. If you find a way to make that work, full hat tip, but I got my doubts. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.